$10 each. Click, call, or visit a Spectrum store today.
We said we'd never break the 3-second rule. Never do that. And never become a minivan mom.
Hey, Chris.
As parents, we say never a lot, but never happens. So when you say you'd never leave your child in a hot car, know it can happen. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
I'm Bree Driscoll, and here's your Spectrum News in 90. The earliest signs of cooperation between Russia and Ukraine are expected to take place today. The two countries will exchange prisoners, including wounded Ukrainian soldiers, after a lengthy phone call with President Donald Trump. Russia's President Vladimir Putin agreed to a limited deal where Russia will halt all attacks on energy infrastructure in Ukraine. The deal falls short of a 30-day broad ceasefire discussed in Saudi Arabia last week. A federal judge rules the U.S. DOJ service likely acted unconstitutionally in its dismantling of the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. The administration is now facing orders to reverse actions and pause making additional layoffs. The administration says it will appeal the order. The Federal Reserve is expected to signal 2 interest rate cuts this year while holding rates steady for now. Any cuts, once seen as good news, are now expected to offset a struggling economy in the wake of widespread tariffs, cuts on government spending, and general uncertainty. Consumer sentiment has fallen sharply as Americans worry inflation will rise in the coming months. And home sweet home. After 9 months in space, NASA astronauts Sunny Williams and Butch Wilmore have landed back on Earth. They will be taken to Johnson Space Center, where a NASA flight surgeon will examine their health. That's your Spectrum News in 90.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your weather on the One's forecast. We're halfway through the week, and we're going to stay pretty mild across the southeastern portions of the United States. We'll be in the upper 70s in Raleigh, down to the low 80s in Atlanta, and all across the Sunshine State, high temperatures will run in the low to middle 80s as well. But we've got blizzard-like conditions to talk about in the northern plains, severe thunderstorms as well, and then another swing in our temperatures on the way. We'll talk about that in more detail coming up.
I'm Bree Driscoll, and thanks so much for joining us here on Spectrum News. Today is Wednesday, March 19th. Happening today, the earliest signs of cooperation between Russia and Ukraine. The two countries will exchange prisoners, including wounded Ukrainian soldiers. After a lengthy phone call with President Donald Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin has agreed to a limited agreement. Russia will halt all attacks on energy infrastructure in Ukraine. In return, the Kremlin requested a halt in foreign military aid and intelligence to Ukraine. The deal falls short of a 30-day broad ceasefire discussed in Saudi Arabia last week. Spectrum's Angie Gonzalez joins us now with more. Angie, what did Presidents Trump and Putin agree to?
Well, part of what's been set up is a prisoner exchange between Russia and Ukraine, Bree, with 175 prisoners each being exchanged by both sides. Now, Russia will also hand over 23 badly wounded soldiers. The two also came to an agreement on a limited 30-day ceasefire in which both Russia and Ukraine are not supposed to carry out attacks on energy infrastructure in either country. Now, Putin stopped short of agreeing to what the Trump administration did get Ukraine to sign on to last week, which was a full 30-day ceasefire. American and Russian officials are supposed to continue discussions towards achieving that goal. But late Tuesday, Ukrainian officials say that Russia struck a medical facility in the northeastern part of Ukraine. No injuries were reported, but firefighters did have to evacuate at least 147 patients from that hospital. And the blast wave also damaged the premises of a children's medical facility. So, Bree, the war itself continues, although the White House said that the president's conversation should be seen as a movement towards peace. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's looking forward to speaking to President Trump to get more information about his call with Putin. Bree?
And Angie, do we know what Putin is asking for in exchange for a full ceasefire with Ukraine?
So there's some discrepancy over that. According to the Kremlin, Putin reiterated his demand for an end to foreign military and intelligence assistance to Ukraine, but President Trump denied that during an interview with Fox News.
We didn't talk about aid, actually. We didn't talk about aid at all. We talked about a lot of things, but aid was never discussed.
Now, Bree, the White House also said that the two did not talk about the possibility of any land concessions to achieve peace. This despite President Trump saying that they would be discussing that on Sunday. Now, Bree, they did, however, talk about the possibility of economic cooperation between the two countries and some proposed hockey matches in the U.S. and Russia between Russian and American players. Bree?
Angie Gonzalez, thank you very much, Angie. A judge rules President Trump's U.S. DOJ service likely violated the Constitution. The administration is facing orders to reverse course on its dismantling of the U.S. Agency for International Development, known as USAID. Our Washington reporter Evan Kozlov has more.
Likely unconstitutional. That's how a federal judge described the dismantling of the U.S. Agency for International Development, ordering Elon Musk's DOJ to stop making any further cuts. This agency has been a primary target of sweeping cuts since President Donald Trump took office, his administration canceling thousands of grants and contracts and placing all but a fraction of its workforce on leave, while firing around 1,600 U.S.-based workers. But in this ruling, Judge Theodore Chuang from the District Court of Maryland ordered the Trump administration to restore email and computer access to all employees at USAID, including those on administrative leave. All of this centering on the role played by Musk as the head of President Trump's cost-cutting office known as DOJ. The lawsuit arguing he doesn't have the authority to dismantle agencies as an unelected person. And ultimately, the judge agreed, saying Musk has, quote, firm control over DOJ. A White House spokesperson blasting the judge's decision on Tuesday, writing in part, rogue judges are subverting the will of the American people in their attempt to stop President Trump from carrying out his agenda. That spokesperson saying they'll appeal this ruling. Both Musk and President Trump argue that the DOJ cuts are needed to root out fraud and waste, and argue that USAID in particular has been a hub for wasteful and partisan projects across the globe. Meanwhile, this ruling is being celebrated by groups like the State Democracy Defenders Fund, which filed the lawsuit. A spokesperson saying that the DOJ effort is, quote, performing surgery with a chainsaw instead of a scalpel. In Washington, I'm Evan Kozlov, Spectrum News.
The Federal Reserve is expected to signal 2 interest rate cuts this year, and today the Reserve will update its rates. They're expected to hold rates steady again. With more on what to expect, we turn now to Spectrum's Brianna Foose. Brianna, what else have you learned?
Well, morning, Bree. Yeah, the Fed expected to pause rate cuts. We'll continue to see the federal funds rate range about 4.3%, right? With that, though, they're also expected to adjust their views on the economy and possibly the future paths of interest rates. Chair Jerome Powell and others have said the Fed is in what is in a wait-and-see mode as they evaluate the impact of President Donald Trump's policies on the economy and, of course, the tariffs.
And is the Fed expected to cut interest rates at all this year?
Yeah, so it could cut its key interest rate twice this year, the same forecast it issued back in December. That's down from the Fed's 19 policymakers' estimate in September of those 4 rate cuts. Those new projections suggested we, the consumer, might not actually enjoy lower rates for mortgages, auto loans, credit cards, and other forms of borrowing this year. And of course, Bree, people are nervous. In fact, the University of Michigan's index of consumer sentiment dropped 10.5% on a monthly basis this month, and it plunged nearly 27% over the past year. Americans so worried about inflation that it's going to rise in the coming months as well. And Bria, it also doesn't help that Barclays, a major bank, right, is now forecasting growth of just 0.7%, significantly down from 2.5% in 2024.
And Brianna, if the Fed were to cut rates, it's not all good news.
Right, yeah, rate cuts typically celebrated, right? But economists say the cuts could be bad news made to offset an economy struggling in the wake of widespread tariffs, rapid cuts in government spending, and a spike in the economy. But again, that is not expected to happen today. Of course, we'll be following the 2 o'clock meeting very closely. Bring back to you.
Brianna Foose reporting for us. Thank you very much. A homecoming 9 months in the making. Coming up here on Spectrum News, how NASA brought 2 astronauts home with a splash.
Weather can be beautiful, inconvenient, and at times powerful. And it affects everything we do. At Spectrum News Plus, our weather experts update you with the information and the context you need so you can better plan your day. And we do it every 10 minutes. We're the calm in the storm. Weather on the Ones on Spectrum News Plus, exclusively on Spectrum. And get your weather anytime on the Spectrum News app.
I really am in the middle of nowhere. Every day is different. Chores, come on, homeschooling, and then I fit in the rug business. I just got a new batch of rugs that I'd love to show you. I have a website, and a lot of what I do is sharing my home life. Mommy's leaving. Reliable, high-speed internet is the foundation of our business. Spectrum was great. They went out of their way to make sure that I was okay and I was taken care of. Shoo! And that's the awesomeness of having Spectrum.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Even the mighty might not see it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test to know where you stand and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. Be your own hero on smartphones everywhere at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Weather on the Ones forecast. We're halfway through the week and our attention turns to the northern plains as a pretty strong area of low pressure is working its way out of the Rockies, and this is expected to strengthen, and that wind field is going to tighten up, giving us some gusty winds and some heavy snowfall rates at times in a place like Nebraska, Iowa, and Kansas over the course of the day today, which is where we have blizzard warnings in effect. And they stretch as far north as portions of southeastern Minnesota all the way through Iowa and into those areas that I mentioned before. Winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories are also in place for a few areas as far north as the upper peninsula of Michigan. And we're going to see a good amount of snowfall from this storm system, but more importantly, with the blizzard warnings in place, it's because we're going to be dealing with some gusty winds. There's a lot of wind energy, and as that wind field tightens up, we're going to get some gusts well over 50+ miles per hour, especially across the Omaha region as we get towards 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, gusts well over 50 miles per hour. And with heavy snowfall, we're going to have those blizzard conditions certainly in place. Those strong winds start to work its way eastward into portions of the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley as we get towards the end of the day today and into our Thursday. Gusts will still be around 30-40+ miles per hour as well. So again, a lot of wind energy in the atmosphere associated with this potent storm system working its way into the northern plains. We're going to get some heavy snowfall around lunchtime, and that snowfall is going to work its way up into portions of Minnesota, into Wisconsin, and the far northern portions of Michigan by the end of the day today. And this also has a severe weather component associated with it as well. So a little bit of everything over the next 24 hours for many of those areas in the Midwest. Take a look at snowfall totals through Thursday evening. We're going to have a swath of snow around 6 to 8+ inches, maybe close to a foot in a few communities, especially around the Omaha region and stretching into Iowa and Minnesota as well. So feeling like winter for sure for the final days of it. Spring officially starts on Thursday, and we'll get some spring-like weather in a few spots, but going to be a little unsettled as that storm system works its way into the northeastern portions of the country. Severe weather threat, though, is going to continue today, and we'll talk about it coming up in 10 minutes.
Here's a look at what you need to know this morning. Russia and Ukraine are expected to exchange prisoners as part of the limited ceasefire deal agreed upon by Russia's President Vladimir Putin. Russia will also halt all attacks on energy infrastructure in Ukraine. A judge rules the U.S. DOJ service likely acted unconstitutionally in its dismantling of the U.S. Agency for International Development. And the Federal Reserve is expected to signal 2 interest rate cuts this year while holding rates steady for now. The cuts could offset a struggling economy in the wake of widespread tariffs. And that's a look at what you need to know. A successful splashdown 9 months in the making. NASA astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore returned from the International Space Station last night, along with 2 other astronauts. Spectrum's Greg Pallone has the story from Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
2 NASA astronauts who spent a heck of a lot of time in space, unexpected time on a test mission, now back home. Crew 9 splashing down on Florida's Gulf Coast at 5:57 p.m. right on time. Butch Wilmore, Suni Williams with their 2 colleagues safely splashing down after coming back from the International Space Station, taking about 16, 17 hours to get there upon the splashdown. They were recovered by the SpaceX team, their Megan recovery ship, their Crew Dragon spacecraft Freedom lifted onto that recovery ship, and then that's when we saw the 2 astronauts preceding them. You had Commander Nick Hague and Russian cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov, but then Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore being assisted egressing from their Crew Dragon after their long journey, 286 days in space. That's a lot of time to be spending on orbit. NASA no doubt will be researching their journey there at the International Space Station after their Boeing Starliner had some issues on their flight back in June of last year. NASA deciding that Starliner spacecraft was not safe for them to fly home, so they stayed on there for a long duration mission. Crews recovering that capsule and helping the astronauts. Now they'll fly to the mainland where they'll be for quite some time. Then eventually they'll be flying back to the Johnson Space Center. They'll be in the crew quarters there. That's where a NASA flight surgeon will examine them, make sure their health is good, and then in the next couple of days, if all goes well, they'll be sent home to their families, home to their friends, their pets, who've been anxiously awaiting their return to Earth. An incredible mission. Crew 9 now wrapped up. Crew 10 on board the International Space Station, and we'll be following along with that mission as well. At the Kennedy Space Center, Greg Pallone, Spectrum News.
The parents of missing college student Sudiksha Kunanki have asked authorities to officially declare her dead so they can begin their grieving process. But one former law enforcement officer suggests there could have been other reasons for requesting the declaration.
For instance, if they were to bring a wrongful death suit against the hotel, against Joshua Reeby, to begin that process, to start getting that discovery, you have to have some ruling that the person is actually dead.
In a letter obtained by CNN, Kunanki's parents wrote investigators believe the 20-year-old may have drowned. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu facing domestic backlash after the latest airstrikes in Gaza. Less than 24 hours after Netanyahu ordered the strikes, Israeli protesters gathered outside the country's parliament in Jerusalem, calling for peace.
The government of Israel has decided overnight that the fate of the hostages will be like the fate of Hamas. Hamas is going to be destroyed, and also the hostages are going to be destroyed. It's a dark night, dark day for the state of Israel.
According to public health officials, yesterday's strikes killed at least 400 Palestinians, including women and children. The attack effectively ends the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Netanyahu says, quote, "This is just the beginning." Classified documents related to the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy have been released. The Trump administration made the files public last night through the National Archives website. The release fulfills a campaign promise, as well as an executive order Trump signed upon returning to office. Although the president told reporters to expect at least 80,000 pages to be released, it's unclear how many there are or if they differ from documents that have already been made public. Kennedy was shot and killed on November 22nd, 1963, during a visit to Dallas. Although police arrested Lee Harvey Oswald for the murder, he was shot and killed before he could stand trial. Just ahead here on Spectrum News, how a church in Massachusetts is honoring the thousands of COVID victims from the state.
Spectrum News Plus. News from a new perspective, dedicated to refreshing storytelling and empowering communities across the nation. With balanced reporting, providing real context and in-depth coverage 24 hours a day.
Here's a look at your forecast across the country.
Local stories, connecting communities. We are Spectrum News Plus. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
Starting a business is hard. You have to stay connected at all times.
As we've been growing the studio, Spectrum's been there every step of the way. I'm always able to make the phone call that I need. I'm able to shoot that text message or that email. Every vital piece of equipment that we have here uses Spectrum.
Fast, reliable internet, starting at $40 a month, backed by the Spectrum commitment to keep your business connected.
Food isn't just fuel to live, it's fuel to grow. My family relied on public assistance to help provide meals for us. These meals fueled my involvement in theater and the arts as a child, which fostered my love for acting. The Feeding America network of food banks helps millions of people put food on the table. When people are fed, futures are nourished. Join the movement to end hunger, and together we can open endless possibilities for people to thrive. Visit feedingamerica.org/actnow.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff, like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your weather on the Ones forecast. Halfway through the week, and we've got big time changes coming to our weather pattern, all associated with this area of low pressure working its way into the northern plains, and this is going to have impacts all across the central U.S., regardless if you're seeing thunderstorms later today, blizzard-like conditions. We have a lot of wind energy in the atmosphere, and as a result of that, high wind warnings are in place, stretching from Iowa, Nebraska, down into the central U.S. Wind advisories elsewhere, and this is going to be the case for us over the course of the evening hours. Gusts are going to get well over 50 miles per hour in some spots, and maybe over 60 plus miles per hour, given how strong this area of low pressure is going to be. And since it's been so dry of late, the humidity values are pretty low. We're going to keep a red flag warning, increased risk for fire danger across many of these communities as a result of that as well. Not expecting any rainfall anytime soon, but we've been dealing with some brush fires over the last several days because of those conditions, and hopefully the gusts will start to die down as we transition towards the end of the week to help contain some of those brush fires that have been ongoing. The bigger talking point, aside from the blizzard-like conditions, is going to be our risk for severe weather. We've got a marginal risk stretching all the way down towards Alabama and portions of Mississippi, and a level 3 enhanced risk across Illinois and portions of Indiana as well. The main concern with this is going to be damaging winds, obviously with the amount of wind energy that we're talking about, but also a risk for isolated tornado or two in this area in orange here across Illinois. That is going to be the greatest threat as we transition into the afternoon and evening hours. We'll have to watch for some isolated supercells ahead of the line that's going to be developing that could bring some damaging winds and maybe produce a tornado or two as well. That line of thunderstorms works its way into Indiana as we get towards the end of the day today, and watch what happens as that line pushes to the north and east. On the backside of this, temperatures are going to drop big time, and some of those areas that we're dealing with some severe thunderstorms are going to see some snow showers as we get into the end of the day today and into early Thursday morning, holding on to some clouds and some gusty conditions, and the temperatures reflect that as well. We'll be in the low 60s in Chicago this afternoon. Take a look at the difference in Missouri. 75 in St. Louis, upper 50s in Kansas City, and we're going to be much colder on the backside of this frontal system as temperatures drop down into the 50s and the 40s across the northern plains. So big temperature swing in store for us as we transition to the end of the weekend. As we get into the next 6 to 10 days, we are going to see below average temperatures taking shape across the Ohio Valley and into the eastern half of the United States as well. And the above average temperatures are more than likely going to take shape, especially out west across the California region, Nevada. Going to be seeing temperatures running about 15 plus degrees above the average.
According to the World Health Organization, the COVID pandemic is responsible for an estimated 7 million deaths globally. That includes more than 1.2 million in the U.S. 5 years later, one Massachusetts church has set up a unique art display to commemorate the victims. Here's Spectrum's Megan Parsons.
17,347. A horrifying number, and one that's very hard to grasp until you see it. A work of art draped across the sanctuary at All Saints Church in Worcester represents the lives lost to COVID-19 in Massachusetts during the state of emergency. You know, COVID had peaks and valleys. Sometimes it would be 10 people, sometimes it would be 150 people. The Reverend Meredith Ward worked on the project from May of 2020 to May of 2021, each week adding a new piece of cloth or ribbon honoring another life gone. At first, I thought about making it somber. If you look, the first, few feet of it are kind of grays and whites and pastels. But I realized that these were living, breathing, happy, active people, and this was about their lives as much as about their deaths. What began as a way to help her young grandsons understand what was happening quickly turned into something more. They thought that 1,000 people dying wasn't that many people, because they're kids. Kids don't get it, adults don't get it. The varying colors of fabric tied side by side on a line symbolize the way COVID-19 impacted everyone. Living alone or dying in isolation in a hospital bed without having their family near them, or connecting only by video chat. No matter how you were touched by the pandemic, Ward says the nearly 300-yard-long artwork stuns most people who see it. A lot of people, it's sort of an intake of breath, and I had no idea there were that many. Sometimes people would come up to me and say, can you tell me where June of 2023 would be? And then you know that they lost someone. It's now been 5 years since Ward started the project, and she feels society still hasn't acknowledged what happened. She hopes this memorial starts the process. This was something enormous that affected all of us. What do we do? How do we do it? And so this is the first step. And hopefully it will help people have the conversations they need to have. Megan Parsons, Spectrum News.
Okay. It looks like artificial intelligence is expanding into the fast food industry. Yum Brands, the owner of restaurants KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell, announcing a new partnership with tech giant NVIDIA. The fast food chain saying it plans on installing AI tech in its restaurant drive-thrus. There, the tech will be trained to understand orders and human speech patterns. A pilot has already been launched in a handful of locations. The new deal will allow the tech to be added to hundreds of other restaurants in the spring. AI showing up in all kinds of new industries. And don't forget, you can always stay connected with us here at Spectrum News by getting your national and local headlines on the go. Just download the free Spectrum News app. It's available in the App Store and on Google Play. I'm Bree Driscoll. Thanks so much for watching. Your Spectrum News in 90 is coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
I tell my son, I love you every single day. I love you. Now, my dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious moment.
It's game time at the arena, and 20,000 fans are looking for a win. With an ultra-high-speed network and seamless Wi-Fi, fans can get in the door fast and share the game's best moments in real time. And with Spectrum Business committed to keeping them connected 100% of the time, they won't miss a second of the action. A secure, reliable connection from Spectrum Business means the fan experience is a guaranteed win.
Sometimes in life, in order to move forward, it helps to look back. To learn from the pioneers and trailblazers.
To gain inspiration from those who came before us.
To show us what it means to act with empathy and to show that love has no labels.
Join WWE and Love Has No Labels throughout the year in celebrating people from all communities and heritages.
Because when love has no labels, that's a love we can all fight for.
Women are bad with money. That's what the world's been saying for centuries. But now we've got something to say.
Save it. It's time to save ourselves by saving our money.
Until we're no longer 80% more likely than men to live in poverty in retirement.
Save it. The falsehoods, the feelings of fault.
Then, the funds. Learn how to save for your retirement at WeSaySaveIt.org.